This interview is made possible by the View Conference. I'm your host, Jerry Orrs from Kids First, and right now we are with Bill Reeves. He is a technical director at Pixar who has worked on so many amazing Pixar films, ranging from Toy Story 4 to Finding Nemo, Toy Story 1, Ratatouille, Cars, and so many more. Before that, he worked on Pixar shorts, including Tin Toy, which was released in the 1980s and won the Academy Award for Best Animated Short Film. And even before that, he worked on very early Industrial Light and Magic hits like Young Sherlock Holmes and Star Trek Wrath of Khan. Bill, thank you so much for being here today.
It's my pleasure, Jerry. Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. And
So,
thank you for listening to all my films. I don't have to do it anymore. I don't remember half of them, I don't think, at this point.
well, they were all incredible. And my first question, before all of that, you were getting education in a very STEM field in mathematics. That's definitely very different from Pixar and Industrial Light and Magic. They use mathematics, they use computer science, but they're filmmaking companies. They make animated films and they make graphics for films. So can you talk a little bit about that transition from making research papers to helping making films?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that difficult a transition in the sense that the job I had, at Lucasfilm in the beginning when I started in the field, and then where I am now at Pixar is really a technical computer science, math-oriented, job. I have to work with filmmakers and people who come up with creative ideas and draw and do all those kinds of things on the creative side of things. But my day to day, is writing code, debugging code, thinking about how to solve a particular problem that's happening in a particular film, and problem solving. And that's what math and computer science is all about, really, at the heart of it, or at least a big part of it. Um, so it really wasn't for me, and I joined a group that was just perfect in a lot of ways. Like sometimes groups are, there's a wall between them, like the new guys, the old guys, or, or the new way, the old way, like the old way of doing computer animation was, well, with a pencil and paper and ink and paint and whatever. And here we are coming in saying, well, maybe we can use computers to help you make movies and help make different kinds of movies and different kinds of films. But that you could have imagined, a situation where it was really, us and them kind of thing. And the great thing about, the group we had was, and the way we were set up at Lucasfilm and then at Pixar was really, very friendly and very open and very creative. And what we were able to do at Lucasfilm, for example, was show how digital effects, special effects done digitally can look really great and integrate into feature-length films with live action backgrounds. And, I mean, people had imagined doing that, but I think we were one of the very first groups to actually do that and show that, oh, wow, you can do a rack focus on a digital character and cop it into a live action background of a church and shot in England, and it's seamless and it really works. And so we were given that chance, to do that. That's the stained glass man from Sherlock Holmes, and that and then we also worked on Wrath of Khan, where it was a monitor that was displaying our images. So that was sort of separate in some sense, but we were able to create an environment and a look that, I mean, traditional effects at the time probably couldn't have done as in that vision, that look. They could have done something different, I'm sure, but they wanted something specific about a world transforming from a moon to an Earth-like planet, that transformation. So, we were able to slip in there and do a few things that were interesting. And then we went off and did Pixar, doing computer animated stories and whole films, all on computer, whereas the Lucasfilm people and the ILM people, they put together their own group to do, digital effects, and look where they went: Jurassic Park, Terminator 2, also, and Star Wars, and it's everywhere now, with Avatar and all those films. I mean, that's I think we scratched the surface there in the beginning to help show the way of that, but it was that was a lot of fun to be able to do, and it's great to be able to say that in a way, but I haven't done that in many, many, many years. So, but to try to answer your question again, at the heart of what the job I do is really computer science and math, using algebra and differential equations, all sorts of trigonometry, all sorts of things that is just at the core of a real science kind of background.
Mm. I find it so amazing that, like you're saying, you're using differential equations, you're using algebra, you're using math that you learned in school to help make entertainment. There's such a crossover there that so many people don't think possible. When someone goes into math, they think they'll never be able to make entertainment, help make something that people can sit down and watch and enjoy. And I love that your career is an example of, yes, you can do that. Now, before we talk a little bit more about the collaboration between Pixar artists and technical creators, I want to ask you a question. You are talking a little bit about the skills needed to be in this, the mathematics and the scientific skills. Do you think people who are designing the programs that artists use also need to be passionate about the craft, like the storytelling, the animation? Do you think they also need to have a passion and maybe even talents in that field as well?
A passion is great. I mean, a passion of loving movies and loving storytelling and loving creating characters that, are, indelible in the world, and Buzz and Woody, I mean, like, I was part of that, and my passion and doing that and creating those characters, helping create those characters, I didn't do it alone by any means. But being part of that, and that being part of that passion and creating, passion. I mean, the passion of Pixar is creating movies and films that people love and make people happy, which is a great thing to be doing in the world of today and even before, I mean, and in the future. And so having a passion about it is certainly important, in the scheme of things. And then be able to use my talents, from the math side of things to help make that happen is the connection and make it. But, I mean, yeah, if you hate movies and you hate watching TV and you hate video, yeah, why are you working at Pixar? So you need some kind of connection to the sort of the end product, if you will. But otherwise, you don't have to come into it having known how to write a story or what story arcs are or what how to develop a plot and or how to design a character. You can pair up with someone or a team of people to make that happen.
Mm. I think that sense of teamwork really shows in Pixar films because there's talent all across the board. There's talent in your field. The technically Pixar films, off the charts. They win so many awards for a reason. They're exceptional. And in the story, equally exceptional. They're so entertaining for the entire audience. Now, I want to ask you a little bit about your process for developing the technology that's used. For example, particle systems, which you won a Technical Academy Award for. What was the process for creating technology like that? For the audience who doesn't know, particle systems is basically a computational way of simulating a lot of individual particles together. Can be used to create fluids and smoke and fire. Basically, any major film that uses visual effects or animation, they probably use particles. Bill created that. So can you talk a little bit about your process for creating complex computations like that?
Yeah, this goes back a long ways. I mean, the first use of particle systems was in 1982 for Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan. And we had been, and this was in the computer, I was part of the computer division at Lucasfilm at the time, and ILM, which is the special effects house of Lucasfilm, got the contract to do the effects for Star Trek II. And there was this story point where Spock and Kirk were watching a video screen of this enemy's bad bomb that would, wreak havoc on the universe or something. I forget the real details, but anyway. And there was this. They came to us. We were the computer division doing, trying to create technology to do um, effects and animation and whatever. But we didn't have a contract with ILM or anything. But they realized that this effect was difficult for them to do, and that they'd seen computer graphics before, ours and other people's in the industry, and thought, okay, maybe these guys, us guys, could actually do something there. So they came to us and pitched us the story and pitched us the idea, what the effects should be. And I don't know. I mean, I wasn't working on particle systems before that. Before that pitch came in, I mean, I was developing core software, if you will. But I remember sitting around the room after getting the pitch, and just a meeting room, and we were all talking about what could we do, and we knew there was this basically this planet, this moon-like planet at the beginning of the piece, and an Earth-like planet at the end of the piece, and people around the room would say, "I'll do the moon." And another person said, "I'll do the stars in the background." And another person said, I can do the Earth," which Lauren Carpenter said that. And it was like, he's an amazing guy, and he could do this fractal kind of Earth-like thing. And somebody said, "I'll do the little rocket ship kind of thing." And but there needed to be this thing that transitioned from the moon to the Earth, and the idea that came up was sort of this. The bomb exploded, and so everybody thought, well, fire. And I remember just sitting there for a couple seconds, and then I just said, "I'll do the fire," not knowing how to do the fire, not knowing how to do anything, but let me give a go at the fire, because I was sort of the last one, or the last part of that to kick in. And people going looked at me and went, "What, are you sure? Really? Whatever." And yeah, give it a try. I got a few ideas just thinking about it here in the last couple of minutes, and so off I went and tried to come up with what would it take to do sort of an explosion and then a traveling set of fire that envelops the planet. And over the course of a couple of weeks, I think it was, in talking to other people in the group, and I mean, even though it was my problem, we all solved problems together, and an idea came out of that, and I started writing some code to sort of demonstrate what it might look like, and it just evolved from there, and the math in it was so simple. There was very little. It was more writing code to do a simple idea. The particle system, just in general, is a really simple idea. You can make it be complicated by trying to figure out, well, how do the particles really move in complex ways, but mine was just like little volcanoes that they go up and then they come back down, sort of follow a parabola, and so. It just evolved, and then I guess the other trick was, well, how do you color them? What's the color of the thing? And the trick was, well, they're fire, so you don't have to shade them. They don't have to. You can just add them together. They're little particles of fire, so you just start adding them together. You give them a little color, and they change color over time because they cool. And that was that part of it. And you just add them together, and then you comp them on top of the moon or on top of the Earth, and you're done, sort of. That was like 6 months of work. I mean, I collapsed into 3 minutes of explanation, but yeah, so that was that. And then a year and a half later, we were doing this piece called The Adventures of Andre and Wally B. And this was our first character piece we wanted to do. And this was not for ILM or Lucas, so it was the computer division's own little project to sort of show what we could do with characters. And we had two characters, Andre and Wally B. But the set we wanted to show this in was sort of a wooded scene, sort of off in the woods somewhere where these characters lived, I guess. And trying to figure out, well, woods, that means trees. Well, how do we do trees? And I said, well, I know how to, I could take a crack at trees. I'm going to use particle systems to do trees because the leaves are just little particles. I mean, the trunks will be geometry. There will be surfaces and the branches and everything, but the leaves will be just little particles. They won't be round necessarily, and they'll be long or sort of shaped like a leaf, if I can get that, or just like a little dot if I needed to. And so I decided I'll go at the trees with particle systems, and so that's what turned into sort of my. I mean, basically, I wrote a paper about the fire stuff, and then I wrote another paper about the trees, and those were sort of my two particle system papers, and worked out. I mean, you look back at both effects these days, and boy, that's pretty hokey. That's pretty, low tech, if you will, however you want to describe it. But for the time, it was pretty convincing, and especially for like the Wally B one, because it wasn't a special effect. It wasn't comped in over live action or anything. It was sort of it was an animation. It was a world that we created that could be stylized in all sorts of ways. So the trees sort of fit into that mold of stylization, just like the characters did. The characters were a bee. Wally B didn't really look like a bee. He looked like what did he look like? I don't know, something big, honking. He had this big stinger on the back of him. John wanted a big sort of menacing kind of stinger. So anyways.
What I love about what you're saying is things like getting the particles to go in a parabola or getting them to make leaves on trees. That is so fundamental in particle systems today. It's just a few clicks of a button on a software. On any 3D software, it's just a few clicks and you can get that. And you never really consider the fact that all of this had to be invented, and like you said, really just to solve problems. Now, you also talked about before working on particle systems, you were working on the core software. For example, Pixar's core software, Marionette, which you also won a Technical Academy Award for. Now, that is a very complex piece of software, but it's not used by scientists, it's not used by engineers, it's used by artists. It's basically a paintbrush that you had to design and build. So can you talk a little bit about the process for developing software specifically designed for artists to use?
Hmm. Yeah, maybe that's sort of a totally different direction. My brain had to switch a lot to sort of deal with some of those issues that you are well pointed out to do. The marionette, or we called it Menvy. I was not supposed to use that word in the beginning, but what we did, we published papers with it in it, so it's okay. MENV, standing for Modeling Environment. Kind of stupid name, but and so backing up a little bit, we actually had a system at Lucasfilm to do the Star Trek piece in, and to do the Andre and Wally B, and also Sherlock Holmes. I mean, several of our early films were done in a system called MD, Motion Dynamics, I think it was, written by a colleague, Tom Duff. And I helped, sort of code some of that at certain points along the way, but I was more working on the particle system stuff and sort of core software for the computer division in general. Sorry, my hat keeps, I don't usually wear a hat, but my hair is terrible, these days. So so anyways, so we had this early system, and it was really, primitive and simple and all sorts of things. But John Lasseter came in to do Andre and Wally B, and he actually used that system to animate that piece and several other pieces. I think even Luxo Jr. was done in that piece, in that system. And the great thing is we had John on board really early on as a user, as a client, essentially, for the software we wanted to write. So we would sit down with him, and soon after we became Pixar, Andrew Stanton joined the company and Pete Docter joined the company. So we had three, and those names now resonate around the animation world in terms of core talent in computer animation. And we were so lucky to bring those people on and to think of them as our users when we were writing the marionette system. And so we basically said, this is the system for animators. It's not for us to use. It's not. We're not going to use it to do special effects. We're not going to use it to do particle systems, even. Where there's also. I mean, it's a system for animators to sit down and massage and time the animation that they want to put on screen. And so. We treated them as their clients. We tried to make it be so easy to use as possible, and so forgiving, if you will, along the way. On the other hand, we wanted to be very flexible. I think that was another thing that was really important in our design. And so we started with something really simple. Like MD was really simple, so we sort of replicated what MD did as the first version, but we knew that we wanted, version 10 and 20 and 30 eventually, which we got to, by the time we were done with Marionette. And so, we made it very extensible, so we could add new things or we could change things around and make it be better and better as our experience grew, and as you added more people and got more good ideas to put into the system. So I think the last film that used Marionette was Toy Story 3. And Brave, the film after that, was the first film to use Presto. With Presto, by that era, which is the 2000s, somewhere in there, everybody decided, okay, we need to gut the system. I mean, there are things we want to do that we just can't make the old system, the Marionette system, do. So they started on a new version of Presto, or a new version of software called Presto, or is now called Presto. But Brave was the first film to use that system. But I didn't participate in a lot of the coding on the Presto system. I was working on the films much more than developing the software at that time. By then.
It's funny now that we see softwares that have gotten so much more complicated, but also much easier to learn. For the audience, if you're interested in learning 3D animation, Blender is an open source 3D software that has a lot of features that other professional softwares have, including the features that a lot of Pixar softwares have. So check out that if you're interested. And also, the View Conference has actually done an interview very recently with Dylan Cision, who's on the RenderMan team, and he talked a little bit about the future of Pixar technology related to NPR, non-physically based graphics. Make sure to check out that interview as well. But Bill, looking ahead at the future, Pixar is definitely changing in the future. The entire animation world is constantly changing, and there are more and more people going into science, technology, STEM fields that are interested in getting in these entertainment worlds. So what advice would you give to the next generation of technical artists, of programmers, of software developers? What advice would you give to them?
Well, I mean, certainly learn your craft, so if you're in science and technology and whatever, I mean, get a good foundation for that, because like we said earlier in the interview, you never know if you're going to use those differential equations, and you may never, maybe that's something that if you get into the field, never use, but you might. I mean, those are used in a lot of the effects kinds of things, like if you're doing a fire or if you're doing water or all sorts of things like that, and you're trying to build CG to do that, you need to use that stuff. And maybe that's part of the software package you do, and you're not actually coding it up, but you need to understand it. So anyways, but even the simple things like I don't know, I mean, trig and algebra and all sorts of stuff is really important. And just, I mean, you don't need to memorize it. It doesn't need to be implanted into your brain so that you can just snap and it's there. I mean, I go back to my books and reference material all the time and search the web for solutions of things. But it's great to have a good foundation and a good starting place for as much as possible, so get the breadth. Even something like pure math, which you might think is like, oh man, what's this all about? Or statistics. Actually, statistics is really an interesting one. We use statistics a lot, and learning about what we did and where we're going and what we need to do and stuff like that. So anyways, so get a good breadth in your core, and then but if you're interested in this kind of field, establish, like we talked about earlier too, a passion, a love for the arts and for the filmmaking or whatever aspect of things you want to do. And if you have talent in that area, it's not your major, but it could be your minor. There's no problem in having a minor in illustration or painting or doing an animated piece or something like that. There's no harm in doing that, and in fact, it's somewhat of a plus, if you have that experience. So, but you don't necessarily need it. I'm just saying that it's good to have. It's good to have an appreciation of what that's all about. What else to say about getting into the field? I mean, go to a good school, that has a track record of creating graduates who go into the field. If you can track down a school that does that, and then I mean, a teamwork. I mean, try to be part of a team. If you in some way or another, whether it's a CG project or not. It could be a project in machine learning. It could be a project in all sorts of things like that. Something completely different. But be part of a team and understand what that's about and how to work that. And it'll be different when you get to Pixar. The teams will be different and dynamics. But on the other hand, it will be a lot the same. So anyway, so that's another thing that I like to tell people to really appreciate and understand what it means to be part of a team and part of a group of people trying to solve a problem. Because just like, we almost started with, I mean, at Pixar, the art inspires the technology and the technology inspires the art. And it's a saying that John Lasseter always used to say, and I'll crib from him, no problems. And, and it's true. I mean, it's like, we get together and together we can make these films, so
I think
that answer your question?
No, absolutely. That answered the question. I think that's some really amazing advice. Sadly, that is all the time we have, Bill. Thank you so much for talking to me all about your career and your work.
Jerry, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. For our audience, make sure to check out all of Bill's works, all of Bill's films. If you're interested in Industrial Light Magic, we just recently did an interview with Rob Rado. He's the head of ILM. Check out that interview for more information about what Industrial Light Magic is doing today. They have some amazing work going on. And if you're interested in Pixar, we also just did an interview with Sharon Callahan. She is a director of photography at Pixar, and she has some really amazing work going on there, so make sure to check out that interview as well. This interview was made possible by the View Conference. The View Conference is a yearly event that is going on both online and in person. It is happening between October 18th and October 23rd. For information about it, go to viewconference.it. I'm your host, Jerry Orrs from Kids First. Bye!